The idea here is to just get started talking about this novel. We already kind of talked a little bit about it in sort of talking about people's first impressions. Now the idea is to be a little more focused in our discussion. And I will make the I think one place to begin is to look at the characters. Now the challenge there is just that people may have different books, and I think I have different page numbers, and so I have my page numbers here, but it takes a little bit of just working to make sure we're all on the same page. But I think there's pretty clearly a sort of a double protagonist structure here, in that there's really two people working together whose actions shape the story. And I think of those two, pretty clearly it's Lisbeth Salander that has resonated a lot with readers and been the kind of the interesting character, so to speak. And so I'm sure we'll pay plenty of attention to her over the course of the novel, or course of the discussion of the novel. But I think the place I'd like to start is just to ask who these two main characters are. That is Mikael Blomkvist, Kalle Blomkvist, and Lisbeth Salander. So in my book, Blomkvist is introduced on page 13 to 19. I have an older version maybe than some people, but about around 13 to 19. Let's see what that is in terms of chapters. That's chapter 1, right, where we get his introduction right at the beginning. There's the epilogue, of course, where we have these flowers described, Henrik Wonger introduced. And then Salander, of course, comes a little bit later, right, where Henrik Wonger commissions this investigation of Blomkvist, and then we're introduced to the person who does the research, who compiles a file on Blomkvist, who is this Lisbeth Salander. So what I like to do is just working with people next to you, choose one of those characters, Blomkvist or Salander, and write up a kind of a character profile. Just try to make a list of inventory character traits that you find, and then we'll use that to talk about the two characters as a class, and begin to compile a kind of analysis of these characters. So talk for a second about who you're going to choose, and then I'm just going to ask people to raise hands so we don't all do one or the other, but we get a kind of an even distribution of people. So if you can do either one, be ready to switch maybe. But let's just decide who you're going to do, and then I'll poll the class, see where people are, and then we can kind of redistribute a little bit to get even distribution. Okay, take a second to figure out who you're going to talk about. Everyone figured out who they want? Who's going to do Salander? Raise your hand if your group is going to do Lisbeth Salander. Raise it high. Okay. Who's going to do Blomkvist? Okay, we're good then. Okay, go ahead and just start working on it. Let's take about 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll talk about it as a class. All right, let's tie your notes together here, and we'll start compiling these profiles. Okay, so we'll start with Blomkvist. Since he's introduced first in the novel, we'll just follow the order the novel gives us. What kind of character is this? Yeah, Chef.
Very rational.
Okay. Very rational. What's an example of his rational? Why do you say that?
I think there's one instance. Yeah, I just saw the movie like a long time.
Okay.
Ago, so I don't get away, but there's one instance where he's supposed to say something that he doesn't want to say that because it would be bad for his company.
Okay, so there's like some idea of calculation based on some sort of interest of one kind or another. So, yeah, he's certainly a rational, presented as a rational character. Unemotional. People say yes, no. Maybe a little bit cold, unemotional, to some degree. We'll see. Emily?
I thought he was kind of like a
Womanizer?
Yeah.
Why do you say that?
Well, like, in the novel, he said, like, he had, like, a wife, but he had interference, like, co-worker he had, so he just kept on making interfere when they moved into each other. Like, that's what happened with the past relationships, too, like, he kept on making interference.
Okay, so he has this marriage and a child from the marriage, and it says it's suggested part of the problem with the reason the marriage fell apart, ended in divorce, was that he has this old friend from his college student days, Erica Berger, who he happens to work with, who he has this ongoing affair with, that is part of her open marriage, quote, end quote. Right, so that there's this kind of unorthodox arrangement that they have, and then as the novel develops, there are other encounters that Blomkvist has along the way. And so in one way you could say Womanizer. Does he? I mean, what? I don't know. What's a womanizer? I mean, is that a why that term? There's lots of terms like that, right? Don Juan, Romeo. What I mean, like skag. I don't know. What do people say? I mean, I'm just trying to pinpoint like what exactly we're identifying in him. Player, right? I mean, what are we trying to get at? Emily or anyone else? Chev.
He has a really open sexuality.
Okay, so other aspects there. Other people can join in. Other people talked about him, right? Cassie?
We think he's very successful because he has this paper magazine on him,
So professionally successful.
especially successful, and the fact that like this giant block is not going to destroy him. Like he talks about how like yes, he'll have to pay the money, yes, it sucks, but it's not like it's like completely wiped out.
So it's like a serious professional hit, but he can kind of survive it somehow. So he must be in a tremendously secure professional situation. He can sort of reinvent himself and like Blomquist 2.0 or whatever. So professionally successful. Yeah, Shuan.
He seems to have a high moral standing because he basically only writes about corruption. He tries to expose it.
Yeah, he's like a muckraker. He's sort of motivated by a moral norm of some kind. He wants to sort of shine a light into corruption, right? Expose corruption. So he's a crusader, right? That's like this kind of, it's a stock journalistic figure, right? The kind of scruffy reporter who's completely devoted to the story and will take any risk in order to expose the facts that he or she discovers, right? So you think about it, maybe people study journalism or have experience with journalism and so forth, right? That's a certain kind of figure, right? That the really ambitious writer who wants to totally go for it. Right now you can see like in the American media, right? Think of all the young people out there. I mean, journalism has maybe changed as a field, but nevertheless, all the young people out there who are, in the greater New York City area who would do anything to take down Chris Christie, right? Get that incriminating email or some source that would tell them about it that would show that he knew about the bridges. He knew it way back when they were being closed. I mean, like the Woodward and Bernstein, right? The Watergate, where it's like the reporter is the hero because he or she stands up to power, takes any risk in order to expose it. So Blomquist is a version of that figure, the crusading journalist, right? Other aspects here. Elizabeth. Yeah.
He was also pretty arrogant. Like in the book he was writing, he was basically saying like all the other financial journalists suck because they're not asking all these like hard questions. They're just like taking whatever they're given. So he has a pretty high opinion of himself.
Yeah. So he seems to want to set himself apart from others in his field. By suggesting that though his methods and his commitments lead him to act much differently than others, right? Of course, any professional setting is also a social setting, and so when you sort of like suggest that I'm better or I'm different than all the people I work with because I have higher values or I'm more committed to the truth, of course, that doesn't necessarily make you a popular person. So he is someone who is not afraid to say I'm better because, whether explicitly or sort of implicitly. Other Blomquist features here. Is he a political person? Oh yeah, Jennifer.
I would say that he's also accomplished.
Okay.
They were researching him. He sounds like he has a pretty extensive background. He's written books and he has done his military service and then he's played music and in addition to his journalism degree, he's done a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so he's that widely experienced person, accomplished in a lot of different areas. So he's kind of like in that way, he's not a young person anymore, right? He's someone who's been in his field for a while and has a lot of experiences in the past, and with that, right, a lot of confidence in, that's part of the arrogance, right? It's almost an overconfidence in what he's able to do. Other thoughts people came up with, or we exhausted them already? Things people noticed. What about, one thing it seems like how does he respond to this whole Wennerstrom thing, this trial? He says he's going to, take time off, and he's going to do the prison term, right? Which he does. But there's also a sense he's going to get him back, right? He's going to bide his time, and then it's going to be payback, right? So that that's of course a melodramatic aspect, right? That he's been wrong, he's a victim. We could put that down there, right? Melodrama often deals with the victim, right? And we know he's a victim, and what does the victim get in melodrama, right? Revenge, right? Actually, one really interesting point I think about people who've written about film and melodrama is that American action cinema is often a melodramatic form. How's that work, right? Why does Sly or Arnold, why do they have to get beat up so bad before they really let loose? They got to be victimized somehow, whether by it's like Rambo, he's victimized by the army, or by the Black Ops people, or whoever it is. The action hero often, the first half of the film, is about all the wrongs that they suffer, both physically and mentally. That's all set up, right, so that when they get armed up, they can really let loose on everyone that's victimized them and right the moral scales, right? Because when someone really, really suffers, really gets victimized, then we're willing to let them exercise, culturally illegitimate force in righting the scales again. And of course here we have Blomkvist. He's been wronged, right? That's certainly the strong suggestion. He's been set up. He's a fall guy, and he wants revenge, right? So he's a kind of a vengeful person in that sense as well. He wants to see, and you could say the vengefulness is just he wants to see right served. He's not willing to take it lying down, but so it could be principled as well. But certainly he's someone that he feels morally upset, right, about the fate that he has suffered. Even though his response is rational, right? He's going to kind of be strategic about how he responds and not get too wrapped up in his emotional response. Any final things about Blomkvist? Okay, let's turn to Lisbeth Salander then. And let's hear what, if I can get this to... Okay, so Salander, what is she? Very famous character now, these days. Sheridan.
She's very quiet.
Okay, extremely. She's like a quiet person. So, quiet, someone who keeps herself, kind of depicted as a sort of almost pathological introvert. Casey? Okay, so distinct appearance. So that it's not just a matter of personal taste, but a distinction. She contrasts to the setting, like her professional setting, and that's notable about her. Gabrielle?
I think she's very detail oriented, kind of techy.
Okay. So someone who is working with technology, I guess we mean by techie, comfortable with it, and also in control of the details of those systems that she's working with. Shuen?
I think Blomkvist mentions that she might have Asperger's.
Okay, there's one point where he's like, so what's wrong with her? Maybe she has Asperger's. This is something that people always say about her. So like on the autistic continuum somehow, someone who seems to be, have those aspects of person, right? What does that mean? Like sort of not showing emotion, sort of savant-like characteristics where she's extremely good at certain things, but almost infantile in other areas. So there's those sorts of things are what people are talking about when they talk about Asperger's and Solander, right? You want to follow up?
She also seems kind of out of touch of other people's emotions.
Right, out of touch. So this is another thing that, right, autism or Asperger's is a version of autism. People talk about that not, incapacity to understand or recognize others' emotions, right? So sort of this is this kind of like disconnect. Chev?
Shiv?
Yeah, Chev, yeah.
She's very resentful.
Okay.
Like what she does to her boss, who raped her. She ends up tattooing him.
Let's hold on that. Let's hold off on the because we're not to that those it's not her boss and we're not there yet. So let's wait until a little bit later with some of those details, right? So, but yeah, is she resentful? Do we see her as a resentful person yet? Would be maybe a question. Yeah, I can't remember your name. Josh, yeah.
She kind of like go along with the quiet thing. She expresses herself through like her actions, like the tattoos and piercings, but through her work as well. Just being very diligent.
Okay, so diligent, hardworking, even you could say right obsessive. This is one of we see this right in the file she compiles on Blomquist, right, where there's this idea that why is she so good, in part not only because of the tools she uses, but the length she goes in completing a job, right? She goes to the ultimate end in getting everything she can, right? And so where some people would have a couple pages in some sort of dossier, she has like this huge file of material that she's compiled. And so, this is part of, the novel suggests, part of the attraction of hiring her, right, is that she is so good at her job, in part because of this diligence, hardworking, obsessive personality. Awesome.
She has no problem with bending the law.
Yeah, so willing to bend the law. Right? Does that mean she's a vigilante?
If she believes in the cause, but if it's for a job, she just looks at it as somebody needs this information.
Right, so there's different ways of thinking about that, right? Because on the one hand, it can be a professional thing where she's like, her devotion will cause her to overlook certain, kind of limits. But on the other hand, how far does that take you? Different attitudes of the law, right? So we can just say the law is an issue here. Caitlin, you had your hand up.
I was just saying that she kind of exaggerates social ineptness to keep people away.
Okay.
Like, I mean, I think it exists already in her, but she definitely plays it up for others.
Is that okay? I'll put it that way, as a shield. Now, it's an interesting question to think about for her. And this is part of that idea of, you could link it to this idea of melodrama, that her appearance gets a lot of attention, and not only in the tattoos and so forth, but right, we get like, she's 24 years old, she's like 4'10", 90 pounds, it's like a very diminutive figure. There's all these sorts of physical descriptions of her. One thing that didn't come up, she's sort of compared physically to Pippi Longstocking, the children's hero of Swedish literature by the author Astrid Lindgren. And you may, if you have any familiarity with Pippi Longstocking, that she's this anarchistic figure who runs wild in this little small town, and she sleeps with her feet on the pillow and her head at the bottom of the bed because she rejects the way people sleep. Everything, she's very anarchistic, right? And so Solander is in some ways a version of that, and as a result, the various ways in which she's described physically upend and reverse a lot of the common expectations. Now the question is that I would just ask on this one, if we just pause for a second and describe her, is so what is going on with that? Just take a second to think about style, how you dress, or your thoughts about the way people dress. There's different ways to think about it, right? A lot of the messages we get about how you should dress are that you have an inner authenticity, the true you, and that you project outward that inner you by the kinds of choices you make about your style, right? We get that all the time. But on the other hand, right, there's this idea that, to take the kind of cliche, right, the suit makes the man, that you're much different on the inside, but that you can put on this costume that makes you appear as someone other than who you really are, right? That style and self-presentation aren't about expression of who you are on the inside, but are about creating an image of how you want to be perceived, right? And those are often in conflict, right? And so the question is, like, for her, is she someone who is like this expressionist model of she's projecting who she is, or in contrast, is this a costume that she puts on, she dons in order to deceive those around her? And there's other ways to think about style as well, right? That it's a game, it's an endless game that you can play. Sometimes you are yourself, sometimes you're not yourself, right? There's no fixed relationship you have to have in relationship to how you're perceived by others. Then, of course, like, you can think of it as all habit, right? A habit formed by where you fit into the society, where you never make the choice at all. You're given an identity by the way you're brought up. So there's 4 different ways to think about the way in which one appears. So what do you think is going on with her, just at sort of first glance, what we see so far? Any thoughts? Costume, identity? It's worth keeping in mind here, yeah.
This is just a thought, but maybe she was abused as a kid. Her parents weren't, like, caring her.
So what you're making a jump here. What are you saying? Just lead us along your path of thought here.
What I'm thinking is, like, she was abused as a kid, I guess.
And so she's been traumatized.
She's been traumatized by her parents.
Okay.
And this is leading her to act the way she does.
Okay, so that she suffered these things in the past that caused her to
dress the way she
does. I mean, on the other hand, one might say, actually, because you could argue, because she suffered abuse, she would want to blend in and hide away from attention, right? So that people didn't kind of start to inquire into her business because of her outlandish appearance. What do you help me understand how you're getting from the abuse to the look?
So I'm just saying, like, how she acts is a reflection of her past.
Okay.
She was abused as a kid, or possible. There's a possibility she was abused as a kid. This is leading her to become, like, quiet, keep to herself, dress the way she does, and really have this, like, cold attitude.
Okay.
Towards other people. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't seen it really good.
So acts reflect trauma. Well, it's an element of trauma for sure, and one thing Ben points to, right, is a kind of one thing about the character is that on the one hand she's like asking for our attention, right, with all kinds of a personal style that is exceptional. That's the way she's described. She's exceptionally small, exceptionally dressed. All kinds of things like that. On the other hand, she's quiet and self-effacing, right? She wants to, on the one hand, stand out, on the other hand, blend in. And so in part of what you're emphasizing is more the blending in with the quietness rather than the physical appearance, one could say. So that's one way to think about it, that perhaps there's something in her past that makes her act or try to appear the way she does. Okay, so it's like a therapy thing. Austin.
She's aware that her appearance is kind of off-putting. When she goes to the Wednesday's building, she takes out her piercing, puts on a shade of lipstick that isn't black, and tries to, make herself less obvious. So she's aware of what she's doing. She's not just putting it on.
So there's again a sense of she can use her appearance as a tool, and she presents herself in different ways at different times in order to get an effect out of people. And so the idea then would be that kind of coming across as a goth of some, whatever, however you want to describe her, is a way of anticipating people's expectations for her and, right, meeting them with something. So it's a means of, like, controlling situations. Should we put control there? That, you project, by projecting a certain style and certain attitude, right, you impact the people around you. We all know, or maybe you are someone like this, people who walk in a room, right, and command attention. For example, anyone ever, you go to a party or something like that, and you, think about the actual spatial organization of people in a party. Who are the people at the middle of the room that people are gravitating around? And who are the people against the wall? Like, we know the term wallflower and things like that, but there's a whole, obviously there's, aspects of personality and so forth and so on. But on the other hand, there's, ideas, about consciously trying to project a certain kind of thing, like as you get to be a professional, right? Or maybe you do this already, and you're trying to, go to meetings or parties or whatever for work reasons, right? You gotta go and shake hands, meet people, get cards, whatever you do. Bluetooth contact info. If you don't do it, you're going to miss out on an opportunity. And how do you do? There's a certain ideas of competence projection. And it's not always to be the flashiest person in the room, right? But to create a certain impression, right? If you come across as too flashy or too whatever, that can be a very bad impression, right? So here's something that, what is she doing with that impression? Garter, you had your hand up.
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking that maybe that her whole appearance is just a kind of facade, because you said this, she's really small, so it might just be for her own, self-protection, and she thinks that she looks tough, so people don't mess with her or anything. And it could be into what Ben said, maybe something happened in the past, and now she needs, she feels the need to protect herself in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a kind of a disguise, an armor, where she sort of suits up, right, in order to protect herself. To project something that is more threatening and more competent and more in control than she feels on the inside, right? That's the kind of the suit makes the man idea. That it's about getting control in a way that she doesn't feel like she actually has, right? Certainly, this is one where it lines up a little bit with the way she uses technology too, where that's a tool for her. We seem to see in a lot of situations, for her to gain control, right? To gain chips that she can then play in these various relationships that she has, right? That by using that's use technology, but the same thing maybe goes a little bit for her appearance. Other thoughts for Solander, just kind of beginning to kind of flesh out a little character. That's part of the interest, though, I think, of the character is how do you correlate the ways in which she's depicted as a character with what's supposed to be sort of the true character? Is there a true character? How is she certainly vengeful, right? Did we put that down? That she it's like an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth with her. One more question. How does she feel about others helping her? Sheridan's big shake of the head back there. Yeah, self-efficient, self-reliant, right? She's someone who's totally independent. She does not want people helping her out at all, right? This seems to be a very important part of who she is. Yeah, Shuan.
I think that ties back to her ability to trust other people, because I think that people can't do things as well as she can, so she doesn't think that.
So you're saying she doesn't trust others?
Yeah.
Yeah, self-sufficient, doesn't trust others. And I think it's an important thing to just notice where she is on this scale at the beginning, because a question is, does she change over the course of the novel? Where does she change? How does she change? And it's an interesting contrast to Bloomquist. Does he trust others? How does he rate on in terms of his trust of others compared to Solander? So based on these characters so far, let's finish up with another question. What do you see so far, just in reading the opening 100 pages or so? What are the conflicts in this novel? What are the conflicts in the novel? Again, let's just working with some people sitting close to you. Take a second to kind of inventory what you think as the three main conflicts. Get three of them. Actually, get two of them. The two main conflicts you see in this novel.
You'll see later. I don't know if in the beginning she kind of looks at what happens. I think she does. Like some things have already happened that she just flashbacks. And yeah. Have they explained that she was, I think she's a little bit violent, like she was in
Okay, should we take a look at the main conflicts here to finish up for today? All right. What did you come up with?
Finding Harriet's killer.
Okay, so finding Harriet's killer. What's that? I mean, that's a task. What's the conflict?
Just looking into the past of the Vanger family and kind of all the mysteriousness of the family.
So is that like past versus present?
Yeah.
What's the present? If the Vanger family is about the past, right? This murder, it's the cold case, right? How would you align those? I mean, or is that the conflict? Maybe people disagree with that. In a way, there's kind of one parallelism there is Wennerstrom, the modern financial criminal, or the contemporary financial criminal, versus Vanger, where they have an old-fashioned crime, right? A murder in the family. So there's a sort of a past versus present in terms of these capitalists. It's a great Swedish capitalists, right? That maybe is one part of that conflict. Different kinds of crimes, right? The financial manipulation versus shell companies and the like, versus the Vanger family, where it's like a pathological sex crime, right? That is somewhere back there. So it's suggested. Other aspects, maybe that's maybe one way to see the conflict. Other ways to see it on that one, or other conflicts that you identified. I asked everyone to identify two, so let's hear them here, and we'll finish up. Yeah, Cassie.
You talked about the conflict just between Elizabeth
Okay. So what's the when you say they have trouble getting along together? Put your therapist hat on and tell us what is their conflict? Why are they in tension? Okay, so digging, invasion versus integrity. Right. So on the one hand, well, she's like a person who is self-reliant, self-efficient, and strong individual. She doesn't respect those boundaries with others. She tries to keep others at bay, but she just goes into their affairs. So I guess you could say there's a little bit of hypocrisy there, right? On Lisbeth's part. Is that how you spell it? Hypocrisy. Thank you. Is it ASY? Thank you. I'm going to leave that. ISY. Thank you. Okay. Other conflicts here. So, but yeah, she's a little bit of a hypocrite in that she has such a high wall, but then she wants to climb over others' walls. Right. Other conflicts people identified here. Anyone know the Swedish title of this novel? Men Who Hate Women, right? Is this men versus women a little bit? Yeah. I mean, what's the name for a man who hates women? A misogynist, right? This is like the novel could be called Misogyny, which is, we'll put up the discussion of the title another time, but it is interesting to think about those different titles. But yeah, maybe men versus women. It's like about a gender war. How do we see that in the opening part of the novel? Anyone? Yeah, Caitlin, thank you. Well, yeah, excellent. Look at the epigraph here, right? Part 1, incentive. 18% of women in Sweden have at one time been threatened by a man. Or is that 8? It seemed like it'd be more than 18%, but right where it begins with these sort of like programmatic statistics that are supposed to be kind of set. I mean, they tell us what the conflict is: men threatening women, and then more of the same. So there's a strong gender conflict in the novel. Other conflicts here. Thank you.
I don't know how early on they talk about it, but probably Lisbeth's conflict with her.
Okay, so I'm going to put that. That's not only finding Harriet's killer, but Lisbeth is past versus present. So I'll just put up here that she too is caught up in a conflict between the past and the present. And of course, if you maybe you in a different way than Elizabeth, you feel a conflict with your past. Oftentimes what you try to do if you feel a conflict with your past is reinvent yourself or change yourself or alter yourself one way or another in relationship to your past, right? To slough off that old person and become a new person, right? That's this idea of reinvention. And of course, that's part of her character, as we'll see in various ways. Now, that's maybe one that's open and complicated, but worth keeping track of. But that's the bigger question: is how does she change? Does she change? How does she change over the course of the novel? And it's kind of, if you think of the men-woman conflict, how many novels and films are about men who change while women stay true and kind of like stand there in the background and stand by their man while it's the man who's in the conflict and changing? It's a very typical sort of structural feature of a lot of fiction, both on film and on page. And this is a question here: is it Blomkvist who changes, or is it Lisbeth who changes? And how do they change? That's a way of measuring the political promises that the novel makes in terms of its gender politics. Okay, so we have some idea of some of the opening conflicts, and the characters. We'll continue with Dragon Tattoo on Thursday.